VSiN is going back to the basics for novice bettors. Learn your betting terminology, theories, and strategies. Avoid common mistakes and enhance your overall betting experience. Learn how it works and how to win. Class is in session. It's time for Betting 101.
We've taken attendance, and we're ready to rock here. Betting 101 on the Vegas Stats and Information Network, live at the South Point Hotel and Casino. Sam Panayotovich alongside Vinny Magliulo from Gone Gaming and Duane Colucci from the Rampart Hotel and Casino. Gentlemen, when they asked who do we need to do Betting 101, I said we need Magliulo, we need Colucci. That's pretty fair, right?
Magliulo, Colucci, yeah, we'll give you some wagering information, how to, and you might get a recipe or two as well.
Wow, look at that. And the basics.
We're going to eat and drink wine.
Of betting, not the cooking. The cooking show comes out after the new year, but the basics of Betting 101. Let's start very simple. Let's go elementary. Let's start with the point spread. If somebody were to walk up and ask you, Vinny Magliulo, what is the point spread? How would you answer that question?
Good question. That's a great start, Sam. I mean, if you're looking, let's put up a graphic with Team A and Team B. There is going to be a number. Let's put, say, -3 next to Team B. That is the point spread. That is the point spread that we have established for this particular matchup. Now, what that means is this, Sam. If you wager on Team B, they must win this game by more than 3 points for you to collect your wager. If they win the game by less than 3, then Team A would win the wager. If they win by exactly 3, then the wager is what's referred to as a push or a refund. So once again, if you wager on Team B, they must win the contest by more than 3 points. If you wager on Team A, certainly they can win the game outright, or if they lose the game by less than 3, Team A is the victor.
And of course, 3-point game would equal a push or a tie. And Duane, people also ask you all the time, what does this little plus and what does this little minus mean here on my sheet?
Yeah, these are definitely the most frequent questions asked to a bookmaker when you're dealing with a novice wagerer. They want to know, what is the minus? What is the column next to it, the big total up there? And, we're always explaining this. We're there to explain it. That's our job. And as Vinny touched upon, -3, you must win by more than 3. That is called a favorite. +3 is the underdog. You could lose by as many as 3, and you will still get your money back.
So let's take it inside, maybe behind the sports book, as to how the sausage is made, Vin, as far as getting to that 3. How do we arrive at 3? How do bookmakers come up with said spreads?
Good question, Sam. It's an important question, too. Every team has a numerical value that we determine, and we determine it by their strengths and their weaknesses. Obviously, record in the case of football or any team, the skill positions, the key players. In football, it's obviously the quarterback and who has the advantage there. And then what we'll do is we'll compare the numerical value of each team, factor in home field, common opponents, any injuries that may or may not exist, and then we'll put up that number in this particular case here. The example we're using here between A and B, we've determined that Team B, the starting point should be -3, and all those factors I mentioned come into play to determine that opening line.
And Duane, we've seen many situations over the years where a point spread can move not only a point or a 2, because a lot of times when a point spread moves a point or 2, that's off of money. But there have been other examples where a point spread could move 4, 5, 6, 7 points.
Definitely, injuries, weather, these are all factors that as a bookmaker we take into consideration, Sam. So, you could see point spreads move drastically without even wagers being made. And, people are perplexed by that at times. But, we have to calculate every factor as a bookmaker into making this a fair and concise point spread, as we call it.
And here's another simple question. So some people would ask, Finn, well, I laid 3, but the line moved down to 1. What number do I get? Well, you get the number on your ticket. This isn't your bookie in the 70s with the voicemail anymore.
Yeah, important for folks to understand that you have the price or the point spread that at the time of your wager, you are locked into that price. It is not a parimutuel wager. These are fixed odds wagers. Parimutuel is a situation like at in horse racing at the track or OTB, whereby the money is pooled and then it's calculated, and then there's a price at the end of the wagering after the race goes off. In terms of sports wagering, in the example we're using here, you are locked into your price at the time of your wager.
And Duane, we remember a game, I believe it was the Cavaliers against the Thunder. We go back a couple of years when Kyrie Irving, LeBron James, Kevin Love all get ruled out. How tough is it as a bookmaker to not only know how much to move it, but how quickly to move it? You have to monitor these things all the time.
These have to be monitored, Sam. And yes, we have to be right on top of it, move it as quickly as possible. As you said, when you're dealing with LeBron James, Kyrie Irving on the same team, you're talking a drastic, move of the point spread. And we definitely monitor this at all times. That's our job. And we make the adjustments as needed. So as Vinny touched upon, your point spread, what you have is on your ticket. That is what you're locked into.
So we talked about the point spread, Vin. Let's touch on the total here. What is the total when you come into Vegas and you want to make a bet?
Well, you have the opportunity to wager on whether you think there will be more or less points, combined points scored by both teams during the course of a game. So if we use our example again, Team A and Team B, there's the point spread at Team B -3. Let's use the total of 52. What we're saying here is this is the starting total, where you have the choice to say, I believe that both of these teams will score more or less than 52 points during the course of this game. And just like the point spread, as Duane mentioned before, can move with line movement, the total can change as well, but you're also locked into the price or the total amount at the time of your wager.
And obviously, gentlemen, this 52 is a football game, not a baseball game or a soccer match or a basketball game. Duane, we've seen totals in basketball, a couple totals with the Warriors in the last couple of years. We've seen as high as 240.
Yeah.
It's, certain teams and how we calculate it don't play defense. Certain teams have awesome offenses. This is all calculated, as we touched upon earlier. This is the spread, what we feel that both teams will score combined. And, weather conditions in the NFL are definitely a factor in this. If there's a blizzard out there, it's going to be a lot less than 52 if you're unable to throw the ball and you're predominantly running. The clock starts to tick away. So as bookmakers, we'll make this as, concise as possible. We're trying to keep our eyes on everything, and always remember, pay attention to what's going on. Massive injuries like LeBron James, Tom Brady, these guys will affect totals and point spreads drastically.
But wait, my game went to overtime, and in regulation it was under, but in overtime it pushed it over. What happens?
The overtime is included in both your wager on the game, and in this case the point spread, but also in terms of the total. So that's important to remember too, Sam, that overtime is included when it comes to the price of the game and the total on the game.
I remember a game this past summer. I think Clayton Kershaw was supposed to go for the Dodgers, Duane, and then he gets scratched, and they brought up Joe Blow from AA.
Right.
And the total went from 7.5 to 10 because Clayton Kershaw no longer pitching, and now you go to replacement pitcher.
Yeah, definitely. That's a massive factor, and especially in baseball, when you have a potential Cy Young Award winner like Clayton Kershaw, a Max Scherzer, these guys are a late scratch. Us as bookmakers will take the game down, readjust as we learn who the starting pitcher is, and then put up a new total. And it definitely will be higher when you have a major factor as an off pitcher.
So in our example game, the point spread is 3, the total is 52. But Vin, if I don't want to lay 3, I just want to play the money line.
Sure. And the money line is simply another numerical value that's assigned to each team. So let's look at it here. If you look at Team B, they would be -140. Team A would be +120. Now, let's talk about first what that means. The point spread is not involved in that particular way. You're
All
simply
separate.
You're simply picking one team to win the game outright, regardless of what the score or what the point spread it comes in, whether or not the point spread comes into play. So if you're wagering on Team B, which is the favorite here, you're putting up 140 to win 100, Sam, to get back 240. Conversely, on Team A, you're putting up 100 to win 120 to get back 220.
Makes sense. So minus 140, and Duane, we've seen money lines in many different sports as high. I like to use the example of the Mayweather-McGregor fight, when I believe Floyd Mayweather opened up as a 1 to 25 favorite, so you had to lay 2,500 to win 100. That came crashing down. I believe by the time they got in the ring, Mayweather was 1 to 5 or 1 to 6, and McGregor was like plus 450. So these things can move drastically, and it happens quite a bit.
Yeah, Sam, and that was strictly a money move. You know, we had tons of Conor McGregor backers in that instance, and when the money starts to pile in, you will see us as bookmakers adjust that line, and definitely if you're on the plus side of the money line, the underdog side, and we're starting to get flooded with money that feel the underdog definitely could win the matchup, we start to adjust, and you will see less and less and less. But always, Sam, you know, the novice bettors really like the money line because they want to just pick the game to win. You know, they don't want the point spread involved. And most of my novice and young rookie bettors, I just want to win the game. So it's a very attractive wager because you don't have the point spread calculated, and it's just basically a money move based on who the favorite is and who the underdog is.
There was a game this season, Rams played the Eagles in Los Angeles, and somebody went into the MGM and laid $180,000 on the Rams just to win the game. They were betting $180,000 to win $20,000, and they didn't win. They lose.
Well, they put up the higher price on the big favorite in that case. Conversely, you know, if he would have put up the 20,000 on the Eagles,
5 to 1,
he would have got 5 to 1 for his money. On 100,000, got back 120. So you look at examples like that. Again, it's a matter of who you think is going to win the contest outright, and the point spread does not come into play when it comes to the money line, Sam.
Let's touch on lastly here. We've done the spread, the total, the money line. Duane, if I were going to ask you, what is the juice? How would you respond to that?
Well, the juice is the vigorish, as we call it out here. It's the house courtesy, basically.
Don't call it a tax, though.
I'm not going to call it a tax because we don't like
word.
that. Correct.
It's a handling fee.
Yes. There you go. It's basically, it's an 11 to win 10, minus 110. You will see that as we just shown on the graphic. And either side, whether you take the underdog or you take the favorite, you have to lay 11 to win 10. It is our handling fee.
And this makes it tougher, Vin. If I make 10 bets, I would think on the surface, without knowing anything about the juice or the vigorous or the handling fee, well, I can win 5 out of 10 and I can break even.
Well, yeah, actually, in order to break even, when you're putting up 11 to 10, Sam, the break-even point is about 52.38%. So if you go 5 and 5, laying 11 to 10, you're actually going to come. You're not going to come out ahead. You need to win at least 6 of those wagers to come out ahead.
And conversely speaking, if I were to lay 10 games at minus 140, say I take 10 of those money line bets at minus 140, and I win 5 and I lose 5, I'm down even more.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the higher the point spread, if you will, or the higher the price of an event, your break-even point becomes even greater. So in the case of that, if you're laying $1.40, you're going to have to win 7.5 to 8 of those events out of the 10.
And we'll get into parlays and teasers in later shows here on Betting 101. But if you can explain quickly how the juice works in a parlay or a teaser, if I want to buy up from 6 to a 7-point teaser or something like that.
Well, you have the so let's look at first of all let's define a parlay, right? All right, a parlay is a wager where you are combining at least 2 particular, whether it be teams, or in the case of our example here, a parlay, you can make a 2-team parlay. Team B at -3 to the over 52. That's a 2-team parlay.
You have to win them both.
Okay, and you must win them both. Again, Team B must win by more than 3 points, and the game must exceed 52 total points. You get 13 to 5 in that case. Okay, so if you put up 50, you're going to win 130. And you'll get back 180. So that's now a teaser in the case of say football. You have the ability to move the point spread, to adjust the point spread. Now the odds are not as great as a parlay, as 13 to 5, but you have the ability here to say, okay, I'm going to take Team B at less than 3 points. I think I want to make them a favor. So you take plus 7 points to Team B. Now all of a sudden they're becoming plus 4. If you were to take Team A, you could adjust them to say now they're plus 10. If you were to adjust to say I want, and you can tease the total as well, Duane, to where now there's a difference there, too, if it's a case of 7 points.
And naturally, when you're dealing with teasers, keep in mind that you will be, if you're betting a two-team teaser and taking 6, 6.5, 7 points and adding it to your side, you're going to have to lay a little more. It's going to be in the minus 120, minus 140 range. So as your advantage sways, we have to adjust. That's what our job is as bookmakers, on teasers. Parlays are another story. They are definitely where you can make money if you feel you could string together 2 winners, 3 winners, 4 winners. The price increases and your win increases, but you have to win every game. Remember, on these bets, you must win, and that's how you collect.
He's Duane Colucci. He's Vinny Magliulo. I'm Sam Panayotovich. Just getting started here on Betting 101. When we come back, book etiquette and how to read that big board in the sports book. That's next here on VSiN.
Actually, it can be a little bit more difficult to handicap the bowl games. And one of the reasons is that a lot of these teams playing each other don't really have much history playing each other. I mean, you might have 2 schools that have been around 100 years, and they only have 3 games historically. And the last time they played, they had completely different coaches, obviously none of the same players. So it can be a little more difficult. Plus, they don't share as many common opponents as you would have for 2 teams within the same conference playing each other any given week.
Bowl season, different animal than the regular season for 3 big reasons. Time off, motivation, and coaching changes. Normally a college team plays once a week. Bowl season, they've been off for several weeks. Sometimes they've been off even a month. What's happened in that time? Some of these teams have coaching changes. You're dealing with new coaches, interim coaches, outgoing coaches. Completely different team, completely different culture than you've dealt with all season long. Finally, the matter of motivation. They've been gone for several weeks. Who's prepared? Who's unprepared? Who's rusty? Who doesn't want to be there? Who's motivated? Who's discouraged? Factor these in. It is much different, much harder to handicap than the regular season.
I think when it looks at bowl season and how difficult it may be to set lines, a lot's on matchups and who the teams are. Sometimes a team is really excited to be in a bowl game, and maybe a team that didn't play well during the season, they're not so excited. So we look at that all the time. There's certain coaches that have 2 and 3 weeks to prepare that we look at. There's a lot of factors that go into it. I don't think it's really hard, but I think we just have to really look at all those factors. We're in an information era, and there's plenty of that out there.
College football bowl games really aren't that hard to really, in a sense, put a number to, only because you have so much time from when the season ends to actually when the game is. Now, naturally, between that time, you're obviously a little careful of understanding what can happen with the schoolwork. Why would I say that, Jimmy? There's been a lot of kids with their midterms who don't pass the test, then are ineligible for the bowl game. It's happened quite a few times. It's something you really look forward to. But on the other hand, it's really not as hard as people make it out to be, only because of the time lapse from end of season to the bowl game itself.
Class is in session. It's time for Betting 101.
Duane Colucci, Vinny Magliulo, Sam Panayotovich here, Betting 101 on the Vegas Stats and Information Network. We turn to betting etiquette, how to read the board. But first, I think it's important to start with a little thing called house rules.
Yes, Dean Panayotovich.
Ooh, I like that. Put that on my business card.
The Dean. Sam, it's important for folks to realize, don't just rush into a book and just run right to the counter. There are house rules associated with every aspect of wagering here in the sportsbook. What you want to do is familiarize yourself with those rules. Take a few minutes to go, and they're posted, as well as available in handout form. Familiarize yourself with the house rules, and then when you get to the window, make sure that you're clarifying a particular house rule or set of rules to your particular wager. Don't be afraid to ask the teller, the writer, or a supervisor exactly what they mean. Now, you don't want to have that conversation right at post time. So if it's, for instance, if it's a little this is an important tip for you folks that may be new to this process. What you don't want to do is 5 minutes before game time, engage somebody at the window, engage an employee to say, how do I do this? Try to do it in advance. Familiarize yourself with the house rules, and then in advance of the games, probably, give yourself a good half hour, 45 minutes, Duane, before you get to that window. Otherwise, you'll have a lot of folks behind you who will not be voting for you the next time you run for office.
Well, I'll tell you, that's why we post them on the wall at the Rampart. The house rules are right on the wall in the VSiN Sportsbook. And keep in mind, each sport has a different set of house rules. So definitely pay attention to the house rules, because you don't want to put your money down on something that you don't know what you're doing.
Exactly.
Basically, I always say money management is a key when you're dabbling into sports betting 101. And, you just don't want to throw your money away. So pay attention to the house rules. And part of the etiquette, Sam and Vinny, is do not start asking questions 2 minutes before kickoff on an NFL Sunday. That's part of the etiquette. You're going to get a lot of cat calls. You're going to get roughed up. So that's what we mean by etiquette when you're wagering in the VSiN Sportsbook.
So I have this sheet right here, the South Point Week 15 football sheet, and one of these house rules at the bottom, Vin, says all bets are action regardless of site changes. And we had something to deal with this earlier this season when the game was supposed to be in Mexico City between the Chiefs and the Rams. That game moved to Los Angeles, and every house had a different rule.
Yeah, and here in the case of Sabo, what we and a house can do something that's even more fair. So here, typically, an event, a game, has to take place on the scheduled date. If there's a change, then that wager is a refund. And that was a unique situation there because of the field conditions being horrendous, and it was deemed a safety hazard there. So what we did here at the South Point was we gave the folks a choice. For instance, if you had the Rams, then you had either side. You had a choice to get a refund, which was in the house rules, or you could keep your wager. But once it went back to Los Angeles, obviously there was an increase in the point spread. The Rams went from 3.5 to 4.5 point favorites there. So anybody that had the underdog in that game simply took a refund, right? Because they had the ability to get more points. The other part of it was that, if they had the Rams, they kept their ticket on the 3.5. Now, that was solely at our election. We did something that was fair to both sides there. But not everybody handles it the same way. That's why you really need to understand what the house rules are at the time of your wager.
Yeah, so you gave people the option, both South Point and Rampart, to refund or keep. Right. Golden Nugget nixed all the wagers and said everything is a refund. So it all depends on the house that you're in. Duane, if I have never made a bet here in a Vegas casino and I walk up to the window, how should I present my bet? What do I say to make a bet? There are certain ways that I have to, follow in order to make a bet.
Well, it's always good to ask questions before you make the wager. But basically on our odds board, each team to the left of the team has a 3 or 4 number bet. Basically, it signifies the team. It's to the left of the team. So if the Cowboys have to the left of them 321, and the Eagles have 322 to the left of them, 322 signifies the Eagles, 321 signifies the Cowboys. Each sport has different betting numbers, and that signifies the team you want to wager on. Now, we're very accommodating at South Point and the Rampart. I mean, we love to help the guests. You're always going to have these guests come up. Just give me $5 on the Eagles. My tellers are always prepared. I have a fabulous staff, which we will help you out. But when you're dealing with betting sports, you always want to signify the bet number and the amount that you would like to wager.
I love when people walk up to the window and want to place an 8-team parlay 2 minutes before kickoff, and they don't have any rotation numbers.
Well, yeah, that's the rotation of the bet numbers, the betting interest numbers, and again, that's what's entered into the ticket issuing machine. So we said that every team has a numerical value for as we determine point spreads. Well, every team has a betting interest number, as Duane indicated. So that's to the left of the team, so that can be entered into the ticket issuing machine to expedite the process. The other part of that, Sam, is this: check your ticket before you leave the window. Make sure it's exactly what you asked for and that you understand what it means, that you have the correct team, the right selection, that you put up X amount to win the win amount and to get the total back. So check your ticket before you leave the window.
So the best way to go up there, Duane, give me 110 on 330, right?
Correct. Perfect.
330 for 110
said, Sam.
and hand the money down.
Said.
Not I want to put, $100 on,
and always
Cal
remember,
State Fullerton.
That's why we have these sheets for each and every sport, because we do have the numbers on the sheet to the left of each team. And that's the information that is very valuable. So basically, before you just walk up to the window, survey the landscape, check out where our sheets are, grab those for the signified day. We always have the date right on top, the sport. And, even if you just want to call out the team, bring the sheet with you. It helps. And then we could explain and, walk you through the process.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, you don't have to. There's plenty of people, Sam, that walk up and say, "Look, I've never done this before." You just don't want to do that right at the time. Now, if it's right at post time, what we'll simply say is this: you know what? If you want to step aside a few minutes, once this game kicks off or the game starts, then we'll walk you through it. If in that case, we'll always be willing to help you. Help educate yourself now. And again, the purpose of this particular edition here on VSiN is to help educate folks. But again, there's plenty of folks that come up and say, "Listen, I've not done this, but can you help me?" Absolutely. What were you interested in? And we'll start from there, and we'll break it down for them and walk them through the process.
So it sounds like you'll have somebody pull out the fire hose if somebody does that like 30 minutes before kickoff, though.
Yeah, it's, if the lines are long too, but a lot of times too, people are not familiar with it. This you just have to help educate people. And again, as sports wagering expands, the education continues.
Matt Jones behind the glass.
Yeah, I have a question. So in terms of saying I've never placed a bet before, we talked in the last segment about spreads, totals, money lines. So I have the rotation number now. Let's say I don't want to bet on the spread. Let's say I want to bet on the money line. How do I make that bet? What do I say when I go up to the counter?
Yeah, well, that's a good question, Matt. You would say, first of all, which of the teams are you interested in, Team A or Team B? I'm interested in Team A. Okay, how much were you interested in wagering? Well, I want to bet, $20 on Team A. I think Team A is going to win the game. All right, okay, so your $20 will get you back 24. So you think they're going to win the game. Will win you 24, right? And you'll get back 44. So if that's what you want, now make sure. So you believe Team A is going to win this game? Yes, no doubt about it. Team A is my team. They're absolutely going to win this game. They don't need the points. They're going to win it outright. Okay, Matt Jones, here you go. You put up your $20. You're going to win $24. You're going to get back $44. We'll see you when it's time to collect.
I like that. Let's talk about book etiquette here, and we can go kind of back and forth here. I'll let the two bookmakers hit the ping pong ball back and forth if you want. Book etiquette. What are some of the most important things when it comes to book etiquette and behaving like a human being in the book?
Well, first of all, be mindful that you're not the only one in the room, obviously, right? You're in a position where it's a great social, it's probably the greatest social experience in the casino. Sam, where everybody, you could have $20 on a particular game, as I just described with Matt, sitting right next to somebody that's got $20,000 on the same side or $20,000 on the other side, right? You're both cheering equally as hard, rooting equally as hard. Just again, try to control your emotions. Don't overdo it. Don't overextend yourself.
Right. Keep the language to a minimum.
Right? Yeah.
You don't want to offend the guy next to you, as Vinny said, if he has a $20,000 wager and you're betting $10, you know, definitely there is etiquette in the race and sports book, but we love an electric atmosphere.
Yep.
You know, that's what Las Vegas is all about. You know, we want the people to root. You know, you just don't want to get to the octave level where, you know, you're matching the Who concert and you're just screaming your head off and you're not making much sense. I mean, I've seen guys where they're screaming every single play, and it's like, you know, if
Shoot it!
right.
Shoot it!
And if you're watching an NBA game, the NBA is such a long, drawn-out process that if you're cheering every play as Sam was just shoot it, you're going to annoy the guy next to you who maybe has $20,000 on the game and he's relaxing, having his coffee. So, you know, there is book etiquette. We enjoy a rowdy crowd, but let's not get too rowdy.
Enjoy yourself. Stay within your means. Don't overindulge in terms of alcohol. I mean, listen, it's common sense.
Don't be the guy in the book that yells, hit his ass on every play.
Right.
I've sat next to that guy a couple times at a football game. Hit his ass! Every play. Every single play.
Kill him.
I will say, though, this is my first year living in Vegas, being in the book during March Madness is unlike anything I've ever experienced, where the games start at 9, 10 in the morning and go until 9, 10 at night.
You know, Sam, it's a terrific point that you bring up. I go back to the point I made a moment ago about it's a great social experience. I mean, people gather. I will tell you this too. It's the ultimate put your money where your mouth is. I mean, folks are putting up their hard-earned dollars and backing their sides and backing their teams. So, you know what? Bet with confidence, but again, stay within your means.
Correct. And, you know, March Madness is fabulous. The opening round of the tournament is something that definitely you should experience in Las Vegas, as you said, Sam. I mean, you have games that are all ending simultaneously, games going to halftime, tons of action, you know, people backing their colleges, cheering their alma maters. You know, it's just a great, great experience.
I'll tell you another thing. Keep track of your tickets. Don't discard your tickets if you think, you know, Duane just brought up a good point. How many times you see, let's use March Madness as an example, right, Sam? You see there's a blowout at halftime, or with, 10 minutes to go in a game, a team might be up by 25 points. All of a sudden, there are free throws at the end of the game that, may not determine the outcome of the game, but could very well determine the result if you include the point spread. So hold all of your tickets. Don't discard your tickets until after the result. Obviously, if it's a winning ticket, you're going to cash that ticket. But don't just discard your tickets, because at any point during a game, certainly some things can change.
I am not kidding. This is a true story. Somebody walked up, somebody we didn't know, a fan that was watching the games during March Madness, walked up to the studio here at VSiN and said, "Hey, can I borrow some Scotch tape?" Well, why?
Yeah.
Well, I ripped my ticket up with about 8 minutes left to go. I need to tape it back together and cash it.
If you're a movie buff and you've seen James Caan in The Gambler, he was winning a lot of those games at halftime.
That's right.
He was in Las Vegas at the time, made a boatload of college and pro bets, and at halftime he was way ahead. Final scores, he lost a boatload of money. So, you definitely, as Vinny said, don't rip your tickets up. Watch the final score when we post it, because the point spread is calculated, and sometimes it's right down to those free throws at the last second.
When we come back on Betting 101, we'll go behind the book, discuss things like line movement, how do you do it, why do you do it. It's all coming up here on VSiN.
It definitely is harder to handicap a mismatch. I mean, you think about a team like an Alabama playing the Citadel, or a team like that. I mean, what's the difference between 39 and 49 points at the end of the day? Whereas a team that's a lot closer, it's going to come down many times, more than not, to a last-second drive. So those games that are those huge mismatches where it could be anywhere between 30 and 45 or even more points become much more difficult to handicap.
I think when you're handicapping games, I think it's much harder to handicap a mismatch in college football when you've got a smaller school against one of the top major programs, because you don't know what's going to happen many times in the second half. You can have a number up that you think is well, but look at Alabama sometimes. They rest a lot of their players in the second half of a game, or other teams may do the same thing, or you get that big lead and they're just running the ball, or not, I shouldn't say not playing as hard, but they just change the intensity because they're up by so many points and they're running a lot of players in and out. I think it's much more difficult from our side of the counter to handicap a mismatch than a competitive game.
I think it's much harder handicapping a college football mismatch. It's tough to tell if the better team is going to be motivated to play that game, and you get big point spreads, and there's always that backdoor cover. Are they going to blow them out the whole game, or are they going to take it easy because they're looking at the next week? We're a competitive game. Both teams are going into it wanting to win, playing tough. So for me, it's much easier to set a line for a competitive game.
Yeah, mismatch games are always difficult to determine. And a good example of this is the Ohio State Big Ten championship game against Northwestern. Normally a 14-point spread here, you'd say would favor the underdog. They're more likely to come through the back door than normal. But in a game like this, where Ohio State's going for style points in this game, trying to run up the score, trying to impress the committee, maybe sneak into the playoff, we certainly have to consider these outside factors when we make numbers in games like this that are mismatches, and we have them in a lot of championship games, so we're getting to see them right away this week, not just the bowls, but the conference championship games as well.
Class is in session. It's time for Betting 101.
Glad you're with us here on VSiN. Duane Colucci from the Rampart, Vinny Magliulo from Gone Gaming. I'm Sam Panayotovich. So we've talked about the spread and the money line, the total, the juice, book etiquette, how to read the board. I think we should focus here on those lines that move, how they move, why they move. What are the most important factors, Vin, in moving a line?
Most important element when it comes to line movement, Sam, is money wagered, right? I mean, the ultimate goal, we talked in the first segment about the point spread, okay, and the price of a game. Well, sometimes, your goal as a bookmaker is to get two-way action. You want to attract action on both sides of a particular game. And if we use our example of Team A and Team B, with Team B being a 3-point favorite, well, a lot of times, there's instances where not both sides can be wagered, right? So what do you try to do to attract additional? So if there's a heavy amount of action coming in on Team B, and it gets to a certain point where we say, well, we need to take money on Team A, we'll move. We may move to 3.5. And that would hopefully attract money on Team A. So line movement occurs in A, when money is wagered on one of the sides, on one of the teams. In this case, we use Team B, as you see now on the graphic. Team B is a 3.5-point favorite. Will the folks out there say, well, now that's attractive for me to take Team A, or you know what, I think Team B is going to be even stronger, may continue to wager on Team B. But line movement occurs by virtue of money wagered on one of the teams, and you hope to attract money on the other side, Duane.
Making it attractive for the consumer and keeping it fair. That's the whole thing. That's what we try to do. As Vinny said, we want two-way action, definitely, and we want to make a fair point spread. So we always pay attention. It's all about the money, possible late injuries. You don't want a consumer feeling that he's laying too high if, say, a LeBron James sits out, and, you're swaying it, making it unfair for one side, as opposed to the other side. So we try and put out a fair product. We want to keep it concise.
Right, but it's not always money. People think it's just money that moves lines. Sometimes it's necessity on what the house needs, because if somebody, say people are betting at $20 on Team A, and then somebody walks up and bets $20,000 on Team B, you need to balance that book, right?
Well, we're trying to balance the action. I mean, your ultimate goal is to again attract two-way action. Does it always get balanced? Not really. And during the course of a particular week, I would say probably 10% of the games on a full card, 10% of the games might have equal action on both sides, Sam, but you hope to split out the other decisions, the other 95% of those decisions. And that's, again, where the juice or the vig that we also talked about comes into play, to where the house makes its money. Does the house always win? Is a good question too for folks out there. I think it ties into this, with point spreads and line movement and things like that. No, the house doesn't always win, and that's okay.
What?
We understand that. There are times when the public, the bettors, do particularly well, and that's okay. We understand that, because what that does in essence is create more business in the long run.
Yeah, correct. Sometimes you just get teams that, the public will back that team regardless. And, if it's a team that's really playing well, sometimes we can't even out those books, Sam. As much as we try to, we'll definitely adjust the point spread, but still, sometimes you just get, a plethora of money on one side. I mean, case in point, just we spoke earlier, the Rams. I mean, the Rams were just steamrolled this weekend, and, the public just felt that they were going to win the game, and that doesn't necessarily always happen. And we just kept adjusting the spread because, as Vinny said, we want to try and balance it out.
You guys have been behind the counter for years. What's the toughest sport, whether it be a side or a total, to monitor as far as line movement? Which sports move the most at a rapid pace?
Well, I think the most challenging sport probably for the house is college basketball.
Totals, right?
Totals. Well, I go back to college basketball because it does have sides, it does have point spreads, and it does have totals.
And 200
but
teams.
You've got, so you've got that many teams. But Duane's point is important, because as a bettor, you can lock in on one conference. We've got to keep track of all the conferences, all the teams, and things like that. So, as a bettor, bettors don't have to bet every game, and they don't. But we have to book every game.
Correct. We have to make it appealing. We have to try to cater to the masses, and that's very important. So to monitor as a bookmaker, especially at this time of the season, you have college football bowl games. You have professional football going on now, NHL, NBA. It's so hard to monitor these 200 teams during the season. So Vinny is right. A gambler or a person who's wagering on a specific conference could focus in on that, whereas as a bookmaker, we have to pay attention to everything.
Oh, and by the way, there's a free agent signing of tremendous ramifications in baseball that could take place at any moment, and you've got to be aware of that because you've got World Series wagers that are out there as well.
Well, remember, we had this conversation because people in Chicago were asking me about the Bears Super Bowl futures, and this was in April. And you would just give me the money, and I said, no, I don't want to bet it. I just want to know what it was. And at that point, it was 100 to 1. And then they traded for Khalil Mack.
Sure.
And you guys knocked it down right away, and then they start winning.
Right.
And then you got to keep moving it down.
Well, they made some significant moves. The Khalil Mack trade was a great move,
game changer.
And so, and if you, of course, you look at the success of the Bears and win the division and going into the playoffs as one of the stronger NFC teams, Sam. So yeah, you've got to always be aware. Listen, we again, I go back to the fact that bettors don't have to follow and or bet every sport, every game. But from our side of the counter, we've got to make sure that we are on top of every sport and every game.
Jonesy?
So I want to bet on the Lakers game tonight. I just found out LeBron James is not going to play tonight, so I'm rushing to the book to try to bet against the Lakers. I look up now, it says OTB. So what does that mean, and why does it say OTB?
If you see an OTB, that stands for off the board, that's just temporary. Simply temporary until an adjustment can be made, A, to determine if, in fact, he is out. And once it's determined, let's say, that he is out, then there's an adjusted point spread.
Yeah,
so if you're going to do that, run fast.
Yes, run real fast.
I've seen him run. He can book it.
Get your world class sprinter feet going.
I think it's fair to say we're all sort of learning this in-game thing on the fly. Bettors, bookmakers. I mean, this thing is changing the way we watch, changing the way we bet. I can bet after a dunk. I can bet after a foul. I can bet after a missed field goal. I can bet at multiple points of a game now. How challenging has it been for you guys as bookmakers to deal with this revolution?
Fastest growing area of our business, Duane.
Without a doubt. I mean, it's also appealing that Usually in the past, when a game started, you couldn't get down. Now you could get down while the game is in progress. And you have to pay attention as a bookmaker, especially from our side of the counter. You know, injuries during the game, how the flow of the game is going, who is actually playing defense tonight, you know, are the teams turnover prone? You know, you have to pay attention, but it is the fastest, without a doubt, growing wagering technique in race and sports.
You know, Duane, if we could put up our example again, please, where we've got Team B now as a 3.5-point favorite. Let's remember this. The in-game is a separate betting interest from this main game. All right, so what I mean by that is this. Let's say if this was a football game and midway through the third quarter, Team B was ahead by 10 points. You may see at that particular time an adjusted price where Team B is now a 10.5-point favorite. Okay? That's the amount you can either lay. You can lay Team B at 10.5 or take Team A if you think they're going to make a comeback and take 10.5 points. So now you're all of a sudden, again, if the score is 27-17 in the middle of the third quarter, we will post a price, an adjusted point spread on that particular matchup. That's what you would get for the final result of that game.
Right.
Okay?
According to progress.
According to, yes.
We base it according to the progress and the progression of the game and the score and the flow. So, yes, Vinny is right. You know, you will see 3.5 as the opener. If they're late in the third, early fourth quarter up by 10, we're going to add, you know, to that point spread and make you lay a little more.
It's been fascinating, too, in the NFL this year. We've seen a live total at 104.5. With the Chiefs and the Rams. We've also seen a live total at 9.5 with the Colts and the Jags. So it hits on all ends of the spectrum here. And in that game, watching that Chiefs and Rams game on Monday night, they were just flying up and down the field. Live total, 70, 75, 79, 82. How high? 104.5. What?
It's unbelievable. It's taken off so much in popularity. Again, as I mentioned, the fastest growing area of our business. How fast? At one time, the only in progress, if you will, wager available was the halftime wager.
Vinny Magliulo, Duane Colucci, Sam Panayotovich. When we come back, our first bets and maybe some mistakes we've seen over the years here in Vegas. The Betting 101 show continues after this.
For me, it's always college basketball because there's so many games that go on. They start early in the season. You're still focused on the football season when the college basketball season starts. So for me, it's always been college basketball, just so many teams.
I think when it's the hardest sport to handicap, I think from our side of the counter, it's baseball because there's not a point spread involved. It's just picking winners. And I think you look at the public and they're going to say, or the bettors, that that's the easiest sport for them because in so many cases you have kind of the haves and the have-nots. It's much easier to bet streaks. And you're not just betting teams in some cases, you are betting pitchers as well. Historically, baseball has been one of our lowest hold percentages. And from our side of the counter, I think in many cases difficult to handicap.
I would say right now it might be the NFL because the lines are so good. The lines are so tight. There's so much liquidity in the marketplace that if you're off at all, people are going to take advantage of it. And now in 2018 NFL, a lot of these NFL games come down to one singular play or one singular call by the officials. Perfect example, Baltimore Ravens, Oakland Raiders today. Oakland down 10 at 11.5 to 13-point underdogs, down 10 late in the game, decide to go for it on fourth down rather than punt the football. Derek Carr hit, fumbles the ball, returned by the Ravens. So many of these games in the NFL are determined by just one singular play, and the lines are so tight. I always think the NFL is the hardest sport to handicap.
Well, probably college basketball the first few weeks, only because you have new people coming in there. Naturally, the seniors are leaving, but the one and done and stuff like that. But obviously, you know that your power teams are usually going to be about the same starting that year as opposed to the ending of the previous year. But with college basketball, and there's so many teams, so many games, to keep up on all of them is really, really a task. So I would say college basketball, especially the first 3 weeks of the season, is the hardest part for us.
Class is in session. It's time for Betting 101.
Class is almost over. Hope you're not staring at that clock. Hope you've enjoyed it here. Betting 101 on VSiN. Duane Colucci from the Rampart. Vinny Magliulo, Gone Gaming, and one of our guys in the desert. My name is Sam Panayotovich. Our first bets. I think everybody wins their first bet, right? Isn't that the golden rule? You have to win your first bet to get sucked in?
That's how I got here.
That's how I got here, too. My first bet, I'll go first. So I was 16 years old. Wake Forest was number 1 in the country. Chris Paul was their point guard, and they went to Champaign, Illinois, and took on the Fighting Illini. Wake Forest, I think, was a 3-point favorite. They lost that game by 30. And, Duane, I was on the Illini in that game.
Well, you were hooked then. Immediately.
Yes. Oh, yeah, you have to be.
Immediately.
I feel like that's one of those things where you have to win your first bet.
And most consistent gamblers that play in the sports book definitely won their first bet. My first bet was probably at a racetrack, definitely on the New York circuit. I'm just a big horse racing fan and, love to bet on the horses. When I was younger, my favorite number was 5, Vinny. So always had Dad, 2 to win on the 5, 2 to win on the 5. Bet me the 5. So,
I was 8 years old.
8?
8. I went with my Uncle Tony. He told my aunt we were going to the bakery. We wound up at Belmont. And here's the great. There was several phenomenons about this wager. So I'm 8 years old. He said we're going to the bakery. I look up and I'm like, it don't smell like a bakery.
No,
not at all.
He says, no, we're at the. Uncle Tony. He says, so we're at the track. We wind up at the track. So naturally, he says, yeah, who do you like? You like one of these horses? So I think a horse had my. One of my family, one of my brother's names or something, Joe Michael. I said, this horse, so the horse wins.
Yeah.
Well, now I'm hooked, right?
Oh, you're a ringer.
But here's the greatest part. All right, 3 hours later, we get back to my aunt. We get back to my Aunt Mary sitting there like we never left. She says, "Okay, let's eat." So we're going to the bakery. So we did stop at the bakery, but it was after the track.
So at least you had the cannolis.
Well,
you brought them back.
Had the bread, had the cannolis, and I had a winning ticket. Yeah,
I thought it was bad. I said 16.
Oh.
No, I was way younger. Yeah, I was 10 maybe.
8 years old. It was great.
My dad had me at the track in the stroller, seeing 4 go win the Marlboro Cup. So,
That's how it's in your blood.
Yeah.
That's what happens.
This is incredible. This is incredible. I don't know how I segue from this. I kind of want to talk more about Vinny.
Let's go to the bakeries after the show, Sam.
Yeah. Vinny picking horses as an 8-year-old, I feel like is a show in itself. How about some of the mistakes we've seen over the years, whether it be from a bettor or maybe from a bookmaker? Chris Andrews tells this story all the time. The year the Rams won the Super Bowl, Trent Green went down. He was in Reno, booking futures. And he didn't move the number. He dropped it actually down from 200 to 300 to 1. They signed a grocery bagger named Kurt Warner.
Yeah.
And Kurt Warner takes him to the Super Bowl. But Chrissy says, I never moved it up to 300 to 1. And they won the Super Bowl. And he took a lot of action at 300 to 1. Can you guys think of any specifics like that?
Well, there are certain, long shots. I guess there could be great long shot stories that come in. I mean, probably the greatest example is our very own Golden Knights a year ago as anywhere from 100 to 500 to 1 underdogs to win the Stanley Cup. And, 200. And then, you think about it, to win the Western Conference, Duane, in some spots, 200 to 1. So, again, credit the bettors for having that. Is that a mistake? No, I don't consider it a mistake.
It's a learning experience.
But you know what? Expansion team, so it's very tough.
Unprecedented.
It becomes tough, with an expansion team that has never performed, in the history of all sports.
Right.
Every sport gets an expansion, whether it's baseball, whether it's the NHL. And for a team, to handicap from a bookmaker standpoint, especially the NHL, it's difficult. So that's not really a mistake, but it's where a bookmaker takes a hit or a potentially huge hit, on that. If they would have won the Stanley Cup, that's immense because every person with $5 was coming up to the window Vegas Golden Knights, Vegas Golden Knights. The bingo parlor's right next to our Race at Sportsbook, and it's a funny story. The old ladies were just lining up $5 on the Knights, $5 on the Knights, and they were just winning every night. Couldn't adjust the point spread high enough or the money line.
You know, so, I mean, there's terrific stories. There's the story of Black Sunday, which was the Super Bowl between the Cowboys and the Pittsburgh Steelers, where the game went from 3.5 Steelers 3.5 to 4.5. I want to say 1979. We refer to it as Black Sunday because, if you recall, the game fell exactly 4. So what happened was, everybody that laid 3.5 got paid, and that took 4.5 on the Cowboys got paid as well. So mistake. Listen, it just happens to where now that's why you probably see more where point spreads in those situations are not moved as quickly as they are today, particularly on numbers like 3 and 4 and 7.
Right, and definitely, we're here in Las Vegas where everything is legal. Back in the day, if you were a bookmaker back in New York when Joe Namath wins the Super Bowl as a huge double-digit underdog, I'm sure the bookmakers took a beating. So, it's key numbers, Black Sunday, expansion teams. There's always room for the public to knock the books at lights out. So I don't know if it's mistakes, but it's circumstances.
It sounds like, Jonesy, they're saying they don't make mistakes. That's essentially what I'm hearing here. They don't
We just
make
transfer
mistakes.
funds. That's what we do.
Well, I did have to laugh, though, because when the NHL futures came out for this season, didn't see 500 to 1 on the Knights. I didn't see 300 to 1.
You didn't see 500 to 1 on anybody. Because it
saw 10 to 1 on the Vegas
You're
Golden
lucky
Knights.
you saw a 0 behind the digit.
That run, Duane, I remember you telling us about that run when people came into your shop and just kept betting Vegas puck line in the over.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Lay the puck in a half in the over.
It was a gold mine last year. And, you were just waiting as a bookmaker. Are they going to slip up? When's the injury bug coming around? It never came around until Ovechkin started to light the lamp in the final round. So.
And you want to root for it because it's a local
Sure,
team, but at the
exactly.
same time, when all you're doing is paying out.
And good. That's okay, though. Folks have to win sometime. Hopefully this helps educate some more folks and gives them an opportunity to enjoy sports wagering even more.
Guys, thanks for making time. Really appreciate it.
Good to be with you.
Vinny Magliulo, Duane Colucci. I'm Sam Panayotovich. Thanks for listening. The second annual VSiN Bowl Guide is out right now, and we have all the stats, trends, analysis, picks, and breakdowns for every single bowl game. It's a special digital magazine from the Vegas Stats and Information Network. The VSiN Bowl Guide is designed to help improve your handicapping for the entire college football postseason. Our experts break down every single matchup. We have 3 sets of power ratings to help you make your own picks, and 10 VSiN experts give their 10 best bets you don't want to miss out. Plus, Brett Musburger and Steve Makinen offer a position on every single side and every single total. The Bowl Guide was the first special betting guide we ever did, and we received such tremendous feedback. You can check out right now, VSiN.com/Bowl Guide. Our VSiN Bowl Guide, $19.99. You order it, it gets delivered right to your inbox. And if you're not a VSiN All Access subscriber, you would get this special issue if you did subscribe. VSiN.com/subscribe. You get a $79 package that includes Point Spread Weekly up through the Super Bowl, plus the VSiN Bowl Guide, of course, and access to all of our live video and replays for 2 months. VSiN.com/Bowl Guide.
Well, the best time to bet anything is if the time is right for you at the number that you see up there. Parlays and teasers take a little more explaining, so I would try to get to the window as soon as possible. I wouldn't wait to the end when you're in line and there's 10 people ahead of you, then get to the front and actually go through 3 or 4 or 5 parlays from 6 to 8 teamers. Teaser bets, be a little bit more careful with, only because if you cross key numbers there and you don't utilize it, you're just simply wasting your money. The parlays, like everything else, have been this way since the beginning of time. If you're looking to bet the favorites, you want to bet them early in the week because that's when the line will come out. 80% of the time, the games usually go up near the end of the week. So if you're looking to bet the underdog, I would suggest, this is not every time, but most of the time you'll find a better bargain for your bet at the plus side near the end of the week.
So there's a couple of schools of thought here. The first school of thought is that you're better off not placing a parlay or a teaser altogether and just sticking to singles, because that's where the optimal value can be found. But what's the fun in that? We all love to bet parlays and bet teasers. It makes betting more fun, betting more exciting. So the optimal time to be placing a parlay or a teaser is when you see a line that might be a little bit stale, or a line that hasn't moved as quickly as it needs to catch up with the market, because that's when you're going to create the optimal value for yourself as a bettor or a punter.
When you look at parlays, sometimes it's hard enough just to pick one winner, let alone multiple winners. But I think if you like favorites, you want to bet early because you're afraid that number might start to go up a little bit. If you're going to bet underdogs, maybe you wait a little bit to see how high that number goes, maybe to create some value. I think you're looking at key numbers too. If you like a certain team, if it goes beyond 3, maybe you like the underdog. Below 3, maybe you like the favorite. When it comes to teasers, a lot of times you're looking maybe to tease that favorite down, who's say a 6 or 7 point favorite, to maybe pick or actually getting a point or two. And if you like an underdog, again, you're looking at some of those key numbers where you could maybe get over that 3, over that 6, over 7, or over any key numbers to kind of create some value. Again, it's hard enough to pick one, but if you like multiple games, I think that's the best approach.